Welcome to the Startups and AI podcast. Today I'm joined by Shelley Stewart, who's the founder of Stewart Consulting. Shelley, welcome to the show. I would love to hear about your entrepreneurial journey so far.
Great. Thanks for having me. Yeah. So I first sort of set up my first business in 2009 after working in PR, corporate communications for 15 to 20 years. That first business was called Juice PR. And I actually decided to set it up during the financial crisis, which is a bit crazy. But really at that point, I suppose I'd worked in what I would probably call technology PR, primarily business to business for quite a long time. And I'd worked in a few different agencies. I'd also worked with Oracle, and I decided, I'd love to do something on my own or to set up something that is really based on my values, my vision, my way of thinking, my view of good management and leadership, which I didn't always find in the agencies that I worked for. So that's what I did. So that was in 2009. It actually took me about 4 or 5 months to get my first client. And that was actually on referral from a former employer, former agency, MD. And then I went on to pick up some larger clients. In fact, I had a client from a former agency approach me after about a year of leaving. And then I had a direct approach from a big brand called Sage. Sage is a international operating company, the only one they have, called Sage ERP X3. I think it's called Sage X3 now. But that was amazing because previously they'd worked with quite a big agency called Red here in the UK. And they worked with a small team at Red. And the CMO, after working with me for a couple of months on a launch, he asked me to take on the whole PR remit and to mentor his incoming communications lead, who she's from Paris. So in fact, they were based in Paris and I used to travel out there once a month to see them. But that was just amazing. So during the early days of that business, I worked with sort of 50% startup scale-up firms and Sage and companies like Strata, which is a division of Deutsche Telekom. I loved it. Yeah, it's great.
Awesome. So did you continue doing it or did you, how profitable
It
was
really
it? Because you were
profitable.
doing
I
it the
mean, really
first time.
profitable. I ended up not employing anyone full time, but I had like 2 or 3 consultants who supported me when I needed them. Yeah, I think probably in the early days, I could have made a decision to have like a co-founder, I guess, or a business partner. And I met with a couple different people and nothing just really gelled for me. So I decided to just keep going on my own. I think this may come on to another question you're going to ask me a bit further on, but I think that can cause some issues because you end up doing everything yourself. And the problem I had is that I was really busy looking after my clients, making sure everything went well, doing all the quality control, all that sort of thing, client management. And then you neglect the new business pipeline. So I think that's a major challenge that a lot of people who are like solopreneurs have. And, people who don't have like a real sales driven co-founder or sales support at the start. So I left the
Yeah.
business after 5.5 years because I lost Sage after 2.5 years. And then 2 of my smaller clients had financial difficulties, nothing to do with our relationship, just to do with the economic climate here in the UK. So I had to go into permanent employment for about 7, 8 months. It didn't go well. I just had a real cultural mismatch with the employer, I'd say. But after that, I ended up doing some interim leadership roles and I brought back the business and rebranded it Stewart Consulting in 2019. By that point, I was doing more marketing consultancy as well as PR and a lot of mentoring and coaching.
Awesome. So it seems like you did pretty
Yeah,
well initially, and then there was some issues with in terms of
yeah,
like
I'd say so.
scalability. What were the biggest lessons that you learned that now that you're doing it the
Mhm.
second time that new founders can learn from?
I think I probably should have looked around a bit harder for financial support before I left before I sort of I left the business. I sort of put the company into dormancy here. That's what you call dormancy. Business is still there, but it's just not making money. So before I did that, I could have maybe looked at a bit further out for funding. I think the difficulty I felt is that here banks weren't lending at the time. They just weren't lending. And that was across the board. And that's why one of my clients had difficulty as well. So I think it's a hard one. It's a hard one to know when you should leave, when you should stay. And I would just perhaps say explore all your options before you decide to put things on pause.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. And and then you said that you had to
Yeah.
go back into employment. And usually it's not easy once you've
No.
tasted some success as a entrepreneur to
Mm.
go back to work.
And also by that
What's
stage, I was in my 40s.
yeah, what was your thought process there?
So I think also
Hmm.
you get really used to being your own boss because at that point I'd been in leadership roles for well over 10 years. So to go back to having a boss is quite difficult in and of its own. But yeah, you're right. It's not
Yeah,
easy.
yeah.
It's not easy. That's why they wanted to hire me, strangely enough. They wanted to hire me because I was an entrepreneur, I was very entrepreneurial. And they wanted me to bring that into the business. But the first thing they did, after asking me lots of questions, seeking my advice for the first month or two, is to sort of want to stifle that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you definitely learn a lot more
Mm,
as an entrepreneur because you have to have, I mean, you won't be making any money for one
yeah,
if you don't execute. So there's a lot more pressure and then you need
that's for
to
sure.
take a lot more risks. Yeah, what are some of the like biggest risks you took, biggest challenges you faced
I
that
I
people
think it
can
was
learn
just
from?
really leaving that job I had during the financial crisis to start up the first business. That was a big risk. But I was really, really confident at the time. I was just like full of it. To be frank with you, I met this woman, quite senior woman, and she worked for the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. It's like a big bank across Europe. And I was in a meeting with one of her senior advisors, and I realized I was felt feverish, and I thought, does he have the heat on? Turns out I had pneumonia. Yeah, and I was in pitching
Oh,
to this guy. I had pneumonia, so then I had to go into the hospital like a week later. But all I'm saying is that you get so caught up in the rush of it, excitement, that you kind of neglect yourself sometimes. You know, you don't really realize
hmm,
you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself. I mean, in the end, like I said, I picked up that first client after 4 or 5 months. It wasn't that bank, but it was a client in recruitment actually. And then I worked with one of Facebook's first ads API agencies. And then I picked up a former client from a former agency, and then Sage, and then yeah, it all just sort of snowball. It was really good, but yeah, I mean, it's a lot of pressure to put on yourself pretty continually. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, just switching gears,
Hmm.
let's talk about AI. I think with
Hmm.
AI, things are getting much easier to build. And then I think PR and
Yeah.
marketing is becoming even more important because there are so many now new products. What are some of the best practices
Mhm.
that people should follow while doing
Yeah,
like PR
well,
marketing in
here,
this age of
just even
AI?
in the last couple days, I've seen some posts from journalists saying, we don't want to see AI written press releases, for instance. We don't want this AI slop coming through. I don't use AI for writing. Yeah, I never have. I just feel that, I guess with my experience with the sort of sense I've got of news and media, I don't feel it's helpful to me. Otherwise, I'd use it. I do use it for research. I do use it. I have done it for planning. I have used it to help draft contracts, the type of contracts I haven't put together before. That's how I use it. I'm sure I could use it better, more broadly than I do. I think that, for instance, I could really use a great CRM system. I haven't seen anything that really fits. I could probably use it to
Hmm.
help me do that, for instance,
Yeah,
just to set up some
yeah,
of
yeah,
those
absolutely.
administrative things that I don't really want
And
to handle myself.
yeah, yeah, usually I think like what I've heard from most people is it's definitely
Yeah.
helping with productivity
Mm,
gains, like you said, doing research and maybe, things like CRM where
yeah.
you don't want to manage all those things. Like it's easy to scale using AI, but in the end, to make the actual decisions and to write the actual
Yeah.
content, you need that human in the loop. Like what's the biggest challenge for you with AI in your opinion? Like what's the biggest challenge you think?
Keeping up to date with the relevant tools, making sure that I'm exposing myself to enough of it so I don't sort of fall behind. And I think that's difficult. At the same time, I
Hmm.
think there's a lot of pushback here in the media against AI. So it's balancing those things. It's deciding what's going to be a really useful, relevant
Hmm.
way for me to use it and what's not. Because for me, it's all about personal integrity as well. I don't want to and being authentic. I know that's a horrible word and it's overused, but it's still the case that I absolutely need to feel like I'm being authentic. And that's why I don't use it to create content. Well, I'm probably better off using it to support processes. But I think keeping up to date with AI is probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah. Do you think I could get really good someday, that I could generate content that's as good as what humans do? Or do you think there would always be a need of like human creativity?
Well, AI is basically at the moment kind of regenerating what's already there. I mean, I think if AI gets to the point where it is being more like curious, creative, perhaps, but do we want that? Do we want that? Do we want to put people
Yeah.
out of in place of a machine? I
Yeah.
mean, I personally don't think so. And I I just think the human brain is a creative instrument. I don't think AI can ever be quite like the human brain. I know there's lots of experiments going on, like I'm forgetting the name, but where they're mapping like electrodes, or basically attaching like electricity to the brain, and they're using it with AI, generative AI, and I find that a little bit scary. Like it's like neural.
Neural networks. Yeah, I guess like people who say AI could replace it might say that the way humans generate ideas is also probably
Mm,
similar, where we listen to a lot of
mm,
people, we read a lot of books, and we like gather a lot of data and then we process it in some way. But then we come out with original content, and maybe like similar in a similar sense, AI can
mhm,
get a lot of these ideas, inspiration, but then come up with unique ideas. That's like the pro. But then again,
mm.
on the flip side, what would
Yeah,
humans do in such a world? Like, can you imagine yourself doing something else? Like, if let's say you're
I think.
completely, and do you think there would be a way to, let's say
Mm,
AI is doing a lot of this PR marketing work, like, how would people reinvent themselves? You think there would be a way that people would evolve, and just like how the internet came and we used to have physical
mhm.
files, and then like a lot of things got automated. Do you think there might be a post AI world where
Mm.
people maybe focus on ideas and then let AI
I
run
mean,
run with it?
possibly, possibly. Although I have my doubts because I'm just thinking that, AI can't tap into the information that our human brain can. I mean, we're exposed to so much. If you look at during the working day, we're talking to people, we're seeing things, we're listening to different sounds. We are hearing different conversations. We're listening to news. We're listening to, our environment. We take in so much as humans that on a broad scale that I don't think AI can replicate. So I don't think it's ever going to have the same types of thoughts or ideas as a human might. It doesn't have that exposure to the world.
Yeah, it's missing
Mm.
I guess, the physical aspect
Even
of things right
touch,
now, like a physical body, maybe in a sci-fi future. So yeah, essentially it needs
Mm.
to have similar experiences. It needs
Yeah.
like a body and similar senses. And I think we are a bit
Yeah, maybe,
far
although
from
maybe
that
I don't
world
know,
for
maybe not
sure.
too far. I don't know. It's hard to know, isn't it?
You focused on building a services business. Obviously, you've had 10, 20
20 to
years
30 now.
experience in the space.
Yeah,
Have
I
you ever
know.
thought about
That wasn't
building
the
like,
first yet.
yeah. Have you thought about why did you pick services over like maybe trying to solve the problem by building a product? What's your thought?
Am I really an entrepreneur? That's a good question. Did I just go into business for myself because I thought I could do things better, different, more aligned to me? I think probably truer entrepreneurs are going out and building new services, new products, potentially. Although I do think that there are lots of people like me who are considered entrepreneurs. They're probably very entrepreneurial. I think you can't really compare me to like a company that started off with a founder who's built it into a unicorn, for instance.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think you're an
Mhm.
entrepreneur. Like if you're building services by yourself, I consider that. I'm just wondering why you picked
Mm.
this route over the other route. Like obviously, I
Yeah.
guess the obvious answer is you've
Yeah.
had a lot of experience, but have you ever thought about building a
Yeah. So
product,
I
or
am building
like what
something new
drives
at
you
the
to do
moment.
this?
And that is because it's something I've been doing for like over 10 years. And I was encouraged by a young woman or two that I've mentored. And that is, I'm offering a new service, a mentoring service. It's going to have two different tracks. One is aimed at next generation PR leaders. So these are young people probably in their 20s, early 30s who are very ambitious, want to move forward quickly in the industry, and they need help. Second is aimed at quite early stage female founders, because I've worked with a lot of founders, more men than women, and women really need help when it comes to getting funding. I mean, it's so dramatic. The level of funding difference between men and women is very shocking. It hasn't changed really, even in the last 5 years either. So I think women who I have worked with also in the past, and quite recently through Tech London Advocates, which is a program called Block Dojo. I supported a woman just a couple of years ago. So helping women in their funding journey. That's what that's all about. So I'm going to be launching this in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. Congrats. And what do you think is the biggest reason for the gap between men and women not getting similar fundings? What do you think are the biggest factors?
I mean, it's very much controlled by men. A lot of the VCs, the funding bodies, there's obviously prejudices and biases that are deeply ingrained. So it's hard to know. I think as women, I think we need many more male allies in this space, many more. And I don't think women working on their own solely is going to help that. I think it's about men and women coming together to create something that's different, that's going to be more open and inclusive for women who need support. That's what I think it's going to take. I mean, I was talking to someone about this just the other day. I mean, for centuries here, men have had their boys' clubs, their men's clubs, which, existed and women have never had that. So men are used to doing deals between themselves, and women just aren't, not in the same way. So maybe as women, we also need to adopt slightly different mentality. It's about learning from men as much as working with them to create a different sort of scenario, which is much more positive for women's experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, men have had like clubs and, maybe do you think there are other things to maybe mimic? Maybe there could be more VCs who are women and women-centered. Have there
are other angel investors, other angel investment groups in London. They, at the moment, they just don't have the power of the ones that are mainly run by men, or maybe more mixed. So yeah, I think men could help there, potentially provide some learnings as to what they're doing, which is encouraging profitable for their businesses, what principles they're using. Yeah. I think that could all help.
Like, are there any top inspirations that have helped you guide through your career? Like, what have been your top influences and inspirations?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I suppose my father was quite inspirational to me in a strange way, because he was an engineer. He's no longer with us, but he was an engineer, and he used to run like big paper mills. And I remember when I was 15, I had like a summer job in his mill, and it's back in Oregon. And he took me around the mill. He knew all of these mainly guys by name, and he knew like if they had a family, he knew who they were. He had the real personal relationship with people. I mean, like hundreds of guys. And for me, that was really inspiring, even as quite a young person, because I thought, how can he know all these things? Why is he interested? Why is he so interested? And, I just thought it was amazing. And I thought, at the time, I don't think I thought about it overtly, but later on, I thought, I'm quite like that. I'm very open, sometimes open to a fault. But I always like to find out about people and understand them. So there's something of that in me, for sure. My mother was very, very creative. She was a writer, teacher, so also quite inspirational. And I also find women like, like that Christine Lagarde. Christine Lagarde, she's, she was, I think she's head of the IMF now, or one of the, anyway. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
I
just
know.
thought, what a woman.
I know.
She's in this very male world, and she's so successful. I just found her to be someone like I'm a little bit in awe, to be honest. And just to have the stamina and the perseverance to keep going. I think she's a mother as well. So yeah, it's just incredible. And at her age, I think she's probably late 60s now. Yeah, just amazing.
Right. Where do you think your industry
I
is
think
heading
that
in the next 5 years?
it's going to be much more focused. It already, I mean, it has been already PR. But has been strategic, but even more so focused on strategy, big thinking. Because what we see what's going on in the world, what's going on geopolitically. We have to take all of these things in. Yeah. Learn about how we bring our different thoughts, our ideas, and align them with a different, in terms of the nuances, what's going on in the world. We have to be also very values driven as individuals, I think, because I don't think you can sit back and just watch things happen around you anymore. I think you've got to participate. This is another area where AI doesn't really figure. No, I think you do have to participate. So I think PR is going to become more strategic and even more data driven than it has been.
Is there a organization that you think does the PR and marketing the best, and what are like the
Apple's
best practices
historically
they
been
follow?
amazing at its PR and marketing. Patagonia is amazing in terms of what it does, upholding its vision and values in pretty much everything it does. I think companies have to be really consistent in how they practice. So if they are stating their values are such and such, they have to actually walk the walk now. Or else, with social media, especially the way it is, they'll quickly be uncovered. So it's those companies that will increasingly align their vision and their values. I think they are going to be the most attractive companies, because I think Gen Z, they're very much into, personal integrity and values, even more so than my generation, which is Gen X. I think also more so than millennials. So I think that's going to be more and more important.
For new founders, like how does one come up with like a vision and, values that they can PR and market and walk the walk? Like you said, like if someone's starting fresh, they're just new in their business, like what would be the process like?
Some of that can be about personal branding. Some of that is like the early stage of a company and what you want to stand for. I think it obviously needs to involve, not on a personal side, but from a business side, research. You need to research your market, find out what your competitors are doing, look at best practice, like you were just asking me about marketing, and I mentioned Apple. Look at best practice and say, what sort of things do we want to adopt? What do we not want to do? Then start to build your own principles for yourself. But you can mirror the way some other companies do it. I think that can help. Like in terms of how you do things, you can mirror that. I think you can't mirror your values as a business. You've got to decide those for yourself, and you need to communicate, listen to not only your employees, but your stakeholders to help determine what you're really all about, A lot of companies don't want to do this. They don't want to ask questions. I think that's where a lot of trouble happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they make assumptions.
Why do you think that is? Like, is it because it's just profit driven? That's the biggest reason.
But I think if companies look around now, small growing businesses, they must understand that, there's a limit to how much of that behavior you can take on, because I think people are more investigative now around businesses and who they want to work with. That's just my perception. That's my gut feel. I don't really have any stats to back that up, but my gut feel is that people are more concerned now about why companies are doing things the way they are, their policies, their values, all those things. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, finally, we'd love to hear, if you had to leave us with a few best practices to follow as a new entrepreneur, what would help like not make some of the mistakes? What are like the top few things to follow as a new entrepreneur?
First of all, it's interesting. I wrote some of these things down because I think it's so important. I think that if you want to start up a business, you've got to look at yourself really hard and be honest with yourself and say, okay, what sort of personality am I? Do I like structure? Do I need structure? Do I want a safety net? Do I need a safety net? Do I want stability? Do I not care? Am I more of a risk taker? You've got to ask yourself all those questions, because at a certain point, if you don't reflect, I think it will come back to bite you. And you probably will end up going back into employment or doing something else. Probably going back into employment. I think you need to be really self-reflective all the time. You need to allow yourself to be brave, push yourself to be brave at times. And you need to be resilient. You need to have experiences in your life which have tested you. I think if you don't have those things, it's going to be a lot more difficult because you'll come to a challenge and you won't have
Yeah.
anything to base it on.
Yeah.
You won't have anything to base your reactions on, and then you might just give up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty solid advice. Well, thanks, Shelley. Thanks for your time. I think you shared some really good tips there. It was a pleasure talking to you, and all the best with Stewart Consulting.
Thank you very much. Great talking with you.